Hello and welcome to Beer Club. I'm Luke, this is Beer Jerk, and this week we are drinking Black Nectar from Martinborough Brewery, who unsurprisingly are right in the middle of wine country in beautiful Martinborough. It is a brewery that is depicted on the label here, so if you ever want to go and visit them, you can get a good idea of what the place looks like. They've got a really lovely tap room and place where you can go and drink all manner of delicious fresh beers. Cheers. Including this. So, oh god, it's good. So this Nectar was one of the first breweries in their core range when they kicked off back in, I think around 2013, was when they first started brewing this beer. And it makes sense that a brewery should have just a lovely classic stout in their core lineup. These days, the brewery is owned by Pankaj, who is a hospitality expert that's run hotels and done all sorts of big projects working overseas in the States. And he came back to New Zealand and thought he liked beer, liked hospitality. So it seemed like a perfect fit to take over at Martinborough. And the brewer there is Eugene, who's got a background in pharmacology. He's a scientist, which again is kind of a perfect pairing for a brewer. Beer is all about science. Of course, there's the chemical reactions that happen. There's the biology of how the yeast and the organisms interact. There's the physics of what happens inside the fermenters. You definitely get different end results depending on the shape of things. How deep your fermenter is. You get like these conical egg-shaped fermenters that a lot of brewers swear by. So yeah, everything is science, I suppose, rather than just brewing. And this is a stout. It's an oatmeal stout. It is stout season, which is not a thing I abide by. For me, every season is stout season. I love drinking stouts and porters all year round. But it's getting into the colder months, so I've got some really great dark beers lined up for you guys over the next couple of months. So it's going to be nice to chat, compare, contrast this kind of family of styles, really. It depends how far back you do want to go into history. There have always been black beers, things like Braunschweiger Mumm in the 14th century, but the word of porters really comes about from a bit of a tumultuous time in London where prices of everything were going up, kind of similar to what we see these days. An interesting note from the old country, a real big trend that we're seeing over there, well, many trends in beer, but one is that ABVs are going down. So if it's been a while since you've been to England, you may be surprised to see the ABVs of your regular pub beers, things like Carling and Foster's and Peroni. A lot of these generic macro lagers are like 3.7% these days because inflation, cost, fuel, alcohol duty. Of course, the alcohol duty in Britain is nowhere near as high as the duty we pay here in New Zealand, but that is a story for a different day. So kind of a bit like, I suppose, shrinkflation is happening in Britain with the ABV of beers. And that's happening many times throughout the history of beer, with beer styles like mild that we talk about sometimes. And that was happening in the 1700s. And there were a lot of thirsty workers in London that wanted good beer. And they were not wealthy people, and the brewers wanted to find ways to cut costs and make it cheaper and cheaper. So they started getting cheap malt that was wood roasted and just a darker coloured malt. And they were using, of course, wooden vats, so that really emphasised the woodiness and the sort of roastiness. And this style that really is truly of London became attached to the workers. And when you think of porter, you might think of a bloke carrying stuff off a ship, and that person is indeed a porter. But porters were kind of everything. It's interesting to read about the history of porters. A porter was a sort of a coverall catch term for many different kinds of jobs. You had porters that were, delivery people, so couriers and sort of postmen, but then you'd have people that would be relocating timber around timber yards. This was a time where there weren't forklifts and there weren't lorries. It was just mainly, lots of blokes carting shit around by hand. So on big and small scales. So you'd have people, you might be a porter in a kitchen, and your job is to be carrying around the oysters and the seafood, or you might be a porter that is I suppose the equivalent of like an Amazon delivery driver these days. So there were many, many thousands of porters in London, all these hard-working blokes. And as I say, they wanted to have a few beers after work, and things came together, and this style porter was born. And in those days, the word stout, as it still does today, means strong. So stout was just a word for strong beer. So you would absolutely have stout pale ales and stouts of various different kinds of beer. So stout, of course, became connected to porters. A stout porter just means strong porter. And over the years, those two words have taken on various meaning, and it's interesting. Everyone's got opinions, right? So you often hear people say that I don't like stouts, but I like porters. But the word stout and the word porter kind of have no meaning. It purely depends on, the BJCP guidelines do give it meaning, to be fair, but it is on the actual the brewer's interpretation. Generally these days we see it as the ABVs mean nothing. So how high the ABV is not determining whether it's a stout or a porter. It is generally that I suppose a porter would be a cleaner flavour, more hop forward and a bit more bitter, perhaps lighter bodied, whereas a stout generally would be kind of the opposite of those things. So more malt forward, slightly bigger body, you get more roast, more coffee flavour, more chocolate malt. So that's very broadly what most people think about these days when they talk about stout versus porter. But as I say, they can also mean nothing. And then you have all these other wonderful members of the family that we'll discuss as we drink them in the future. So things like your Baltic Porter, which is a fantastic style. It's actually a lager. You've got your different tropical porters, really. I was just listening to a really interesting podcast about Guinness in Nigeria, which is a much stronger version of it, and it is more full-bodied. Guinness in West Africa is really popular, which it is, but when I visited East Africa in Kenya, Guinness was also really popular there. So I think maybe across the whole continent. The stronger African brewed Guinness is really popular, and then you've got the Caribbean stouts that are sort of more on the hoppy end of things. You've got your Indian stouts, which of course the hoppier versions of a stout, which might also be like a Cascadian ale or a hoppy porter. But anyway, there's this whole world of things. But this one is an oatmeal stout, which is a style that came around right at the end of the 1800s. And very simply, someone came up with the idea to stick a load of oatmeal in the brew, which gives the beer more body and viscousness. So these days, oats are a thing that are used in many, many different styles, including a lot of hazy IPAs. That's why they've got that big round mouthfeel. Also, we at Small Gods made a figgy pudding oat wine a few years ago at Christmas time, which we just had on tap at the taproom. I like to keep back some kegs of some of these special big beers. So oat wine is, I suppose, synonymous with equivalent to a barley wine with lots and lots of oats. So yeah, chuck a lot of oats in your mash, and you end up with the proteins and the thickness, just like when you make porridge, and it just gets thick and gloopy. So chuck some oats in your beer and you get that. And then in the 1800s, it really was marketed as a health-giving ale. So there's a wonderful beer style called Invalid's Ale, which was unsurprisingly marketed at infirm people and people that were recuperating or in hospital. And it's interesting looking at all these wonderful old adverts for these these vitalising ales and health-giving ales, which of course were nothing of the sort, but they were tasty, and that people maybe felt a little bit better, feeling like they were doing themselves some good, getting some more oats in them, getting nourished, these nourishing ales. This example is really, really great example. It's got your good roundedness. It's got body to it. It's not a super dry stout. It's definitely not an Irish dry stout, but it's got that drinkability that keeps you coming back. These historic styles that I love so much. These core range type beers that just you can drink day in, day out. Really excellent beer. So I'm just pausing there, just think how much longer I talk about the history of stouts and porters. We've got a couple more coming up, as I say, in the next couple of months. So maybe I will keep my powder dry and save more chats about the dark stuff for those future ones. Anyway, if you find yourself in Martinborough, obviously you're going to get to Martinborough Brewery to take a break from the wine and go and see what else is happening down there. So great work to Eugene and the team at Martinborough, and great work to you for joining us for this drink along. Cheers.